Today, I'm taking everyone to Shandong for a little tour. I heard that in a small mountain village in our Shandong, something strange happened. It's about a river where a bizarre whirlpool suddenly appeared, and the waves it stirred up were huge, showing no signs of stopping at all. Locally, there's a saying, river whirlpools and grave fires. If you see them, run away quick or you'll be in trouble. But this thing just happened to attract a few kids, relying on their numbers. They, facing that whirlpool, were throwing bricks and shooting slingshots. But it was completely useless. At this time, some kids got scared because his grandma had told him there were some spooky things under that whirlpool, and you must never get close. But the white-haired kid beside him was very dismissive of this. His name was Jingdian, nicknamed Zhao Dian, Little Crazy. He directly stripped off his clothes and jumped into the river. He even swam to the center of the whirlpool and dove right down. Now, the other kids were really anxious. They waited and waited, but Zhao Dian didn't come out. They thought he had already met with misfortune. But just then, the whirlpool that had appeared for who knows how many days suddenly disappeared. And Zhao Dian then fished out a jar sealed at both ends from the water. Could it be some white powder inside? The kids couldn't suppress their curiosity. Stretching their necks, they looked closely. And Zhao Dian was crazy enough. He directly adopted Sima Guang's signature move. He smashed the jar open right then and there. And inside the jar, there was only a jujube stone. It was unusually hard and had a jade-like luster. The kids thought they had found a treasure. They all wanted to snatch it over for a closer look. Zhao Dian couldn't fend off 6 hands. In a flash, he stuffed the stone into his mouth. With this move, the little boat of friendship with his friends capsized immediately. So stingy. We're not playing with you anymore. And so, they left grumbling. But Zhao Dian didn't care. Instead, he excitedly ran back to the village. But as soon as he reached the village entrance, Da Huang, the dog he always played with, suddenly barked, woof woof, and started barking fiercely at him. This fright was something else. The stone he had been holding in his mouth was gulped down into his stomach with a gulp. Zhao Dian, exasperated and annoyed, didn't hold back. He directly gave Da Huang a stone-hard flick to the forehead. Then he hurried and fled back home. But as soon as he reached his doorstep, Zhao Dian realized there were actually guests in the yard, and his grandpa gestured silently, telling him to quickly close the door. It turned out, Grandpa was removing dream worms for Erpang from the village. He saw Grandpa holding a red date, rolling it around on Erpang's forehead. In no time, that red date turned purplish-black. The old man knew. Now was the time. He pricked the red date with a needle, and then lifted upwards smoothly, directly from within. He pulled out a sticky, pinkish thing. Watching the 3 people's serious expressions, Erpang's grandma was very puzzled. Because she hadn't seen anything on that red date at all, the old man explained it as, getting old, eyes are failing. Afterwards, the old man burned those pinkish foreign objects clean with candlelight. This meant the dream worms were removed cleanly. The old man also instructed them to boil some lotus leaf water to drink after returning home. Then he helplessly saw the guests off. Because Erpang's grandma was too inconsiderate, she didn't give any payment at all. But the old man, regarding this, seemed to be used to it already. After seeing them off, Zhao Dian naturally busily presented his treasure to Grandpa. Upon hearing that this jar was actually from the whirlpool, the old man immediately became uneasy. First, he routinely scolded Zhao Dian, and then began to examine the strange object in his hand, because he could already see that this jar was no ordinary thing, but rather a spirit jar rumored to be used for sealing evil spirits. Looking again at the bottom of the jar, it clearly read, Fox Dan sealed inside, death to opener. My heavens! Could it be that a fox demon's inner core is sealed inside? The old man hurriedly flipped the jar over to check. Immediately, he discovered a shocking large opening. And looking at the fractured surface, it was clearly smashed open recently. The old man exclaimed that things were bad. He hurriedly asked Zhao Dian if he was the one who did this. Upon hearing that his grandson had actually swallowed the contents of the jar into his stomach, the old man was so shocked that cold sweat broke out. He hurriedly told Zhao Dian to wipe off his clothes. He saw that the scar on his grandson's chest had already become the size of a palm. The old man was instantly shocked and slumped into his chair. If he wasn't mistaken, it should be that little guguaba inside Zhao Dian's body was already devouring the power of the fox den. And the owner of that fox den, I'm afraid, would come knocking on their door any day now. The old man hurriedly asked Zhao Dian, what color exactly was that fox den? Because according to what he knew, beast cores could be identified as male or female based on their color. Traditionally, black is male and red is female. The red demon core that Zhao Dian swallowed now must be from a female demon. Thinking of this, he immediately placed Zhao Dian under house arrest. Not only was he not allowed to leave the village, but also if he encountered any strange women, he had to stay far away. Sure enough, as expected, after a few peaceful days, a three-wheeled cart for collecting mountain goods drove into the village entrance. And on that cart, there was also a beautiful girl sitting. Don't talk to strange women these days, no matter what. This was something Grandpa Dian had repeatedly instructed his grandson, because his grandson had broken a spirit sealing jar and swallowed the red stone inside. And according to the seal script on the bottom of the jar, that stone was clearly a fox den, and it was from a female demon. But how could Zhao Dian be so obedient? Only 2 days had passed, and he was bored stiff. Then he invited a few friends to go fishing by the river at the village entrance. Unfortunately, not long after, a three-wheeled cart drove onto the stone bridge. And on that three-wheeled cart, there was indeed a strange girl with red pupils sitting. Zhao Dian instantly panicked, hearing that the other person not only asked them for directions directly, but also specifically asked to go to his house. He was so scared that he blurted out a national curse. Then he took off running like crazy. This scene also made the two people asking for directions feel somewhat confused. Zhao Dian fled back home as if his life depended on it. As soon as he opened the door, he shouted to Grandpa that things were bad, because Grandpa's prediction was correct. A female fox spirit really did come to their door. When the old man heard this, and that it was actually his grandson's own eyewitness account at the village entrance, he immediately became furious. I've told you so many times to not run wild outside, and yet you wouldn't listen. Now look what happened. The demon has spotted you, hasn't she? But fortunately, Zhao Dian was unharmed. That was already extremely lucky. The old man told him to quickly go into the room and bring out that paper figure with a crying face drawn on it. Sure enough, in no time, the sound of a three-wheeled cart came from the doorway, led by a helpful villager. That woman had already arrived at Grandpa Dian's doorstep. Hearing the knocking at the door, Grandpa Dian frowned and whispered, "Come in." And so, a strange scene unfolded. The woman, looking at the grandfather and grandson's serious, prepared posture before her, was immediately stunned on the spot. Even more unsettling was, a few steps away, there was also a paper effigy with a crying face. The old man wasn't polite, because the main event had arrived. Naturally, he couldn't involve innocent people. After learning that the three-wheeled cart uncle was just in the village to collect mountain goods, and this woman was just someone he picked up along the way, Master Dian Sanye impatiently chased him away. Once everyone else had left, The old man then stared intently at the woman in front of him, asking her to close the gate. The woman was confused, thinking this old man was quite strange. But she did as she was asked. But before she could introduce herself, Master Diane Sonia rudely interrupted her. The old man just made up an excuse, asking the woman to bring over the paper figure with a crying face. Anyone would know, paper figures are mostly funeral items. Is it really appropriate to let a stranger touch them casually? The woman frowned, pondering this, but still picked up the paper figure as asked. Of course. She also muttered about how ugly the paper figure was. But when she asked the old man where she should put the paper figure, the old man remained silent, but just watched silently, as if waiting for something. However, after the three of them just stared at each other for a while, the old man suddenly turned away. He told Zhao Dian to make tea, preparing to welcome guests. What age is this? How could there still be things like fox demon in her course? Thinking of his grandson, who swallowed that inner core, Master Dian Sonia was anxious and pacing around. But this disaster could not be avoided after all, because just 3 days later, a red-eyed girl came to their door. Fortunately, the grandfather and grandson had not been idle these past few days. They had already prepared a crying paper figure for defense. But unexpectedly, this paper figure had no effect at all, because the girl held it in her hand as if nothing was happening. Seeing this, the old man, not knowing what he was thinking, turned around and instructed Zhao Dian to make tea and prepare to welcome guests. However, Zhao Dian was still clearly very wary. Even when pouring tea, he was still a bit apprehensive. This made the girl giggle charmingly, curiously asking him why he ran away when he saw her at the bridge. Unexpectedly, Zhao Dian's mouth was also really unkind, directly saying she looked with a front porch and a back building, very elaborate. The girl didn't even understand, when the old man angrily kicked him. Now, even if the girl didn't understand, she probably understood the meaning of those words. In the subsequent chat, the old man learned that this girl was named Li Zhu, a Chinese American whose ancestral home was in Fujian. Her purpose in coming to the small mountain village was to learn about the situation of Lejianggu from Master Dian Sonia. Upon hearing the 3 words, Lejianggu, the old man suddenly sat up straight, revealing a look of reminiscence. Because the name Lejianggu was something only the older generation knew. Speaking, he directly showed his big foot and lightly stomped it on the ground in front of him. Immediately, a clear footprint appeared. He said the reason this place is called Lejianggu is because a plain and villages among the mountains, plus the outline formed by the 5 lakes behind, exactly resembles a big foot. That's why it got this name. Upon hearing this, Miss Li exclaimed it was interesting. Then she took out a map from her backpack. Judging by the looks of it, it was indeed a topographic map of Lejianggu. However, there were only 4 lakes on the map. The old man, seeing this, was not bothered and smiled, saying there was another lake that ordinary people rarely see, named Yuan Lake. That is a strange and wondrous place. Only those with fate can see it. The old man added that, even in his old age, he had only heard of it and never seen it. But the girl smiled mysteriously upon hearing this, saying that her map clearly marked the 5th lake. Saying this, she unfolded the folded part at the bottom, immediately revealing the mysterious 5th lake. The old man was instantly stunned. He immediately sensed something was wrong. If that's the case, then this map probably isn't of Lejianggu. Miss Li laughed playfully, and then unfolded the folded part at the top of the map. Good heavens, it was actually some strange writing. Li Zhu smiled mysteriously, saying this map wasn't of Lejianggu, but Longzanggu Dragon Palm Gully. The reason, it's for fingers in front and 1 finger behind. is because it's the claw mark of a 5-clawed golden dragon. So this place is now called Le Jianggu, which could only be a deliberate mispronunciation passed down. Master Dayan Sanya, upon hearing this, his expression immediately changed. He stated directly that the woman was talking nonsense, and also questioned the origin of the map. But Li Zhu in front of him had a confident look. Explaining the origin of this map, she said this map was discovered by her in a Japanese archive. Moreover, the map also indicated the time of its creation below, show a 13th year. That year was also 1938 in our calendar. When the old man heard this, the veins on his old hands immediately bulged. He didn't expect that these little devils actually in that year had already drawn a topographic map of this place. Thinking of this, he asked Li Zhu with a grim face what her intentions really were, seeing that the atmosphere had been built up to this point. Li Zhu naturally didn't hide anything anymore, saying she suspected this map was a treasure map. Saying this, she pointed to a Tomo 3 comma pattern seal on the map. Upon hearing this, the old man took the map with a doubtful expression and examined it carefully. He faintly felt that he seemed to have seen this symbol before. At this moment, Zhao Dayan, who was beside him, suddenly remembered. This pattern seems to be on that tree in Shanzi's house, the pattern on a strange insect. As soon as these words came out, Li Zhu immediately became curious. She didn't expect that the Tomo pattern would actually be related to insects. It turned out that not long ago, there was a child in the village named Shunzi who started sleepwalking in the middle of the night. And every time he sleepwalked, he would circle around that big tree. After Master Dayan Sanya rushed over, he discovered that on that big tree, a large white cocoon had actually appeared. And inside that cocoon, there was a fat insect with this pattern on it. At that time, the old man didn't see anything special about it, so he burned the insect with fire. After that, Shunzi's sleepwalking also got better, but as far as he knew, the Tomo pattern was used by people sailing ships in the past as a pattern to ensure safety and peace. How could it now be related to evil spirits? Seeing this, Li Zhu told her insights, because she had investigated some historical materials and learned that this pattern had been learned by Japan, saying it was to bless military fortune and prosperity. But it was also taken by some people and made into Yin-Yang talismans to do all sorts of bad things. Hearing these words, the old man finally understood, but he still couldn't figure out how the evil ways of these little devils would suddenly appear in the village. But Li Zhu's purpose was clearly not just to tell stories. She snatched the map and slapped it on the table. She said this place, since it was targeted by the Japanese even before liberation, doesn't everyone want to go and find out? If this girl wasn't named Li, I would really think it was Counselor Yang walking out of a comic book. The same Chinese American, the same love for treasure hunting and exploration, plus the bizarre events in the remote mountain village. The candle in the tomb vibe immediately came up. But the map drawn by these little devils in her hand made Master Dayan Sanya troubled. That kind of mysterious place. How could irrelevant people casually set foot in it? This girl still wants to use this to hunt for treasure. No way. So Master Dayan Sanya thought it over again and again, and tricked the map into his hands. Then, without saying a word, he stuffed it into his mouth, fearing to leave any clues behind. This stunned Miss Li. She didn't expect this old man, so surprisingly powerful. All right, hard to refuse such kindness. She could only smile cheerfully, took out an identical map from her bag, then displayed it quite playfully. This time, Master Dayan San was utterly frustrated, but Miss Li was also an understanding person, since Master Dayan San was unwilling to offer guidance. then she would have to seek someone else. Then she packed her luggage and prepared to leave. It has to be said, Li Zhu's tactic of playing hard to get was pulled off beautifully. Master Dian San, left with no choice, had to agree to it. Overjoyed, Li Zhu promptly asked about the departure time, but Master Dian San frowned, said they had to wait for 3 days, for a rain-free full moon night, because to uncover the secret of Yuan Lake, it's not that easy. But he also had to make Li Zhu stay, because the old man had already realized this girl had accidentally been caught up in Zhao Dian's fox elixir issue. He left it at that, and the old man said no more, asked Zhao Dian to prepare a room for Li Zhu. And Li Zhu's personality was indeed quite quirky. Embarrassed Zhao Dian. Unknowingly, it was already midnight. In the quiet courtyard, suddenly a series of water sounds arose. Zhao Dian, awakened, quietly got up to check, just in time to see the water pump outside the window, actually continuously gushing water outwards. Out of curiosity, he came to the courtyard alone and looked around. Then he saw an extremely strange scene. The water pump was not only moving by itself. Moreover, in the water vat, there was also a familiar face soaking. This scene immediately scared Zhao Dian into jumping like a monkey. Couldn't help but utter a curse. Fortunately, this face was one he had seen during the day, so he didn't take it seriously. Zhao Dian asked Li Zhu in confusion. Why would she want to get into someone's water vat in the middle of the night? Unexpectedly, Li Zhu actually revealed a hint of allure, saying this summer night is too stuffy and hot. Therefore, she needed to cool off. Then, she even invited Zhao Dian to bathe with her in the water vat. Zhao Dian dared not agree upon hearing this. Naturally, he repeatedly refused, feeling uneasy all over. Seeing this, Li Zhu didn't insist. Instead, she asked Zhao Dian to help her pump water. Speaking of pumping water, Zhao Dian immediately remembered something was wrong. He quickly asked Li Zhu why the water pump was working automatically without anyone there. Li Zhu giggled charmingly, saying her body was pumping water from the side. Can't you see it? Zhao Dian was immediately bewildered. He looked at the water pump with no one around, then looked at Li Zhu in the vat. He didn't believe it at all. But as soon as he finished speaking, the water pump suddenly stopped. After a brief silence, Li Zhu in the water suddenly jumped out, and below that head, it was actually an empty void. Before Zhao Dian could react, he felt a cold, slippery body suddenly press against him from behind. Then a claw plunged into his chest, and the demoness's head was continuously roaring in front of Zhao Dian, demanding him to return the demon elixir. But just at this moment, the head suddenly changed its expression drastically, because she discovered that Zhao Dian in her arms turned into a paper figure with a bang. Then a surge of thunder and fire power burst out. She couldn't dodge, couldn't shake it off either, could only watch helplessly as her body was completely burned to ashes under the thunder and fire. At this moment, Master Dian San stood up from the rooftop, saying he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. The fox demon, realizing she had been tricked, naturally hated it so much she gnashed her teeth. Now that her body was destroyed, it would probably be difficult to escape. But coincidentally, the commotion in the courtyard awakened Li Zhu in the room. She opened the door and looked. Immediately discovered that monster that looked exactly like herself. Before she could react, that head smiled eerily and directly lunged at her. Instantly, Li Zhu was like struck by lightning, standing there trembling incessantly. After a moment, the confusion in her eyes disappeared, revealing a smug and weird smile. However, this was also the opportunity the old man was waiting for. seeing that the fox demon had completely controlled Li Zhu's body. A golden talisman suddenly appeared. With a bang, Li Zhu's body also turned into a paper figure, and then turned into nothingness under the burning thunder and fire. Now, the fox demon's body and head were both burned clean. Presumably, the fox elixir matter was also settled. Only at this point, Li Zhu cautiously poked her head out from the rooftop. It turned out, after learning that she was involved in the fox elixir matter, she followed the old man's plan, staged a series of interconnected schemes to deal with the fox demon. However, this kind of bizarre event really broadened her horizons. In her opinion, if this story were to be filmed by Approaching Science, it would probably take dozens of episodes to cover it. Actually, the old man was able to predict that something would happen tonight, was only realized after meeting Li Zhu. He originally thought, since it was a female fox, it would probably transform into a woman and come to the door. But unexpectedly, this fox demon was extremely cunning, actually transformed into a rough mountain goods collector to scout the way first. Fortunately, he wasn't careless. Li Zhu, after learning the whole story, naturally admired him wholeheartedly. She happily cheered and jumped on the roof, directly woke up all the village dogs, Da Huang and Zhao Hai. Since last night, after the bizarre flying head monster incident in the water vat, Master Dian San repeatedly instructed Zhao Dian and Li Zhu not to make it public, besides the talk of strange and bizarre tales, which is something that everyone is quite wary of. Zhao Dian accidentally swallowing the fox elixir and attracting the fox demon's revenge was also the same. If it was known by outsiders, probably would attract some gossip. Fortunately, Miss Li knew what was important, and quite readily agreed to this. Unknowingly, it was already 3 days later, which is the 15th day of the 6th lunar month. Master Dian San looked at the clear and sunny sky, knew tonight would be a bright full moon night. In other words, tonight was the best time to witness the secretive Yuan Lake. So after dusk, the old man took them to set off. Didn't know how long they walked. Anyway, the sky was gradually getting dark. This made Li Zhu, who was always lively and bold, a little worried. Today, the old man told her to eat as much as she liked. The implication was he planning to send her on her way? Euphemism for death. Fortunately, the old man's expression was normal, raised his finger and pointed forward, saying they would arrive in a few minutes. So, when they rounded a small hill, a huge lake came into view. Even Li Zhu couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of the scenery here. But she didn't see the mystery in the lake that the old man spoke of. Master Dian San smiled mysteriously upon hearing this, saying their standing position was wrong. Today is the month of Wei in a year of Gi Mao. Therefore, they needed to walk 60 more steps forward, then stand in the Kun position and look out at the lake surface. And then they could glimpse the mystery. Li Zhu quickly followed, suddenly discovered in front of her. Some strange changes had appeared. Of course, the lake was still the same lake. The mountain was still the same mountain. Only the moon in the water had turned into 3. Li Zhu was surprised and delighted. She didn't expect to see such a spectacle on this trip. The old man was also gazing at the moon in the lake and told a legend. It is said that the area surrounded by the 3 moon shadows in the lake is connected to a different dimension. And in that other dimension, there are elves, absorbing the essence of the sun and moon within. However, these are not things that ordinary people can see with their naked eyes. Li Zhu was amazed and full of admiration upon hearing this, and even took out her phone, preparing to capture this mystical scene. But no matter how she changed the angle, she could only capture one moon shadow. In the end, she had to give up. She couldn't help but feel a little doubtful, wondering if these were mirages created by the refraction of light. The old man shook his head, saying he was just an old man from a remote mountain village and didn't understand those scientific explanations. But Li Zhu suddenly said something surprising, asking Grandpa 3 whether the scene is the great wilderness pearl in Feng Shui geomancy. The old man was startled. His expression immediately became a bit unnatural, but he quickly turned his head away, saying he didn't know what nonsense she was talking about. Instead of wasting time guessing here, why not take this opportunity to take a few more glances at this rare and wonderful sight? But just at this moment, the old man's pupils suddenly contracted, because he actually noticed on the lake surface an extra strange black shadow had appeared. Upon seeing this, Li Zhu also hurriedly followed his gaze to look, but she couldn't see anything. The old man awkwardly explained, it was because it was late and the night was cold. He just shivered. He then urged the two to prepare to leave. After all, phenomena like these are not something ordinary people can watch for too long. Watching them for too long will surely shorten one's lifespan. However, before leaving, he suddenly sighed with a bit of melancholy, saying that some things, if you can't see them, instead, I will feel more at ease. Li Zhu was somewhat confused, but had no choice but to follow the old man back the way they came. Just listening to the implication in the old man's words, could it be that he really saw something strange? Li Zhu couldn't help but look back again at the deep, dark lake surface, but still could only see the moon shadows rippling on the water.